There's a world beneath the waves that we know less about than the surface of Mars. A realm where pressure crushes steel, where darkness is absolute, and where the secrets of our past might be waiting in silence. We've mapped about 20% of the ocean floor. The rest? It's as unknown to us as another planet. And in that vast, unexplored territory, there are things down there that shouldn't exist. What if I told you that beneath the Pacific Ocean, off the coast of Japan, there's something that looks exactly like an ancient temple complex, or that in the Baltic Sea, there's an object sitting on the sea floor that's covered in what appears to be soot from fire? Even though fire can't burn underwater, these aren't science fiction. They're real discoveries that have scientists, archaeologists, and skeptics locked in debates that have lasted decades. Tonight, we're going down. We're going to explore 5 of the most mysterious underwater structures ever discovered. Some might be ruins of lost civilizations. Others could be natural formations that just happen to look impossibly artificial. And a few of them don't fit into any category we have. In 1986, Kihachiro Arataki was looking for hammerhead sharks near Yonaguni, a small island at the far western edge of Japan. He was a diving guide who'd explored these waters hundreds of times. He thought he knew every reef, every drop-off, every feature of the underwater landscape. And then, at about 75 feet down, he found something that didn't make sense. It was massive, a towering structure rising from the sea floor, with flat surfaces, right angles, and what looked like carved steps leading up its face. Terraces, platforms, columns, all of it covered in coral and algae. But underneath, the geometry was unmistakable. This wasn't a random pile of rocks. This looked designed. The structure is enormous, about 500 feet long and 90 feet wide. It rises in distinct tiers, almost like a step pyramid. There are right-angled corners, channels that look carved, and features that some call roads, stairways, even drainage systems. One researcher, Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist, became obsessed with Yonaguni. He believes it's man-made. He's mapped every feature, identified what he thinks are tool marks, found what look like symbols carved into the stone. He's even proposed a date, around 10,000 years ago, before the site was submerged by rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age, 10,000 years ago. That would make Yonaguni older than the pyramids of Egypt by more than 5,000 years, older than any known civilization in that region. If Kimura is right, it would completely rewrite what we know about human history in the Pacific. But most geologists see something else entirely. They see sandstone, which naturally fractures along straight lines. They see a formation shaped by tectonic activity, erosion, and wave action over millions of years. They point out there's no evidence of construction materials, no pottery, no tools, just rock that happens to look artificial because of the way it broke apart. The debate has lasted 30 years. Kimura has made over 100 dives to the site. He's absolutely convinced, yet the academic community remains skeptical. They don't deny Yonaguni looks impressive. They just don't think it's enough to prove anything. What makes it compelling isn't just the structure itself, it's the location. Japan has a rich history of stone architecture. Sea levels were much lower during the last ice age. Entire landscapes that people lived on are now underwater. So, is it really impossible that humans built something on the coast of Yonaguni, and then the ocean rose and swallowed it? Kihachiro Arataki is still diving there. He's in his 70s now, but he hasn't stopped exploring the site. He believes it's real, and whether it's a monument or a mountain, there's something down there that makes people question everything they thought they knew. In 2011, a team of treasure hunters called Ocean X was searching for shipwrecks between Sweden and Finland. They were using side-scan sonar, looking for old ships that might be carrying valuable cargo. They'd seen thousands of sonar images. They knew what rocks looked like. They knew what shipwrecks looked like. And then they saw something that looked like neither. At about 300 feet deep, the sonar picked up an object that was almost perfectly circular, about 200 feet in diameter. It had geometric features that didn't look natural at all, straight edges, ramps leading up to it, and strangest of all, what looked like a runway or drag marks extending behind it, as if the thing had crashed or been dragged across the sea floor. The internet exploded. People called it everything from a UFO base to a secret Nazi installation to the remnants of Atlantis. The comparisons to the Millennium Falcon became so common, the team couldn't escape them. But they weren't making wild claims. They were just confused, so they went back. They sent divers down to physically examine the object, and what they found made things stranger. The object is made of stone, but not like the surrounding rocks. It's basalt and sandstone, unusual for that area. The surface is smooth in places, rough in others. There are formations that look like pillars or columns, and according to the divers, there are sections that look almost architectural. But the truly bizarre part, their electrical equipment stopped working when they got close. Satellite phones cut out, cameras malfunctioned. Only when they moved away did everything start working again. They repeated the dive multiple times, and the same thing happened each time. Electromagnetic interference near large rock formations isn't unheard of. Certain minerals can affect equipment, but the fact that this kept happening consistently in the same spot, that's what keeps people talking. Geologists say it's likely a glacial deposit. During the last ice age, massive glaciers carried enormous boulders across Scandinavia. When the ice melted, those boulders were left behind in odd places. The circular shape, erosion, the geometric features. Coincidence? It's a reasonable explanation. And yet, the team brought back samples showing unusual metallic content. They found what looked like soot-coating parts of the object. Soot usually comes from fire, but this has been underwater for thousands of years. The Baltic Sea Anomaly remains one of the most debated underwater discoveries because it doesn't fit neatly into any category. It's not clearly natural, but it's not clearly artificial either. And despite all our technology, we still can't say with absolute certainty what it is. In 1968, Joseph Manson Valentine, a zoologist and amateur archaeologist, was flying over shallow waters near North Bimini Island in the Bahamas when he spotted something unusual beneath the surface. From the air, it looked like a path, a long, straight formation of stones stretching across the sea floor in an almost impossibly regular pattern. He organized a dive, and what he found seemed to confirm his impression. Massive rectangular stones, each one several feet across, arranged in a line that extended for roughly half a mile. The stones were flat on top. They had right angles. Some appeared to be stacked. The whole formation looked exactly like an ancient road or causeway that had been submerged by rising sea levels. But the timing made it explosive. Just 3 years earlier, psychic Edgar Cayce had made a prediction. Evidence of Atlantis would be found near Bimini in 1968 or 1969. When Valentine discovered the Bimini Road in September of 1968, believers saw it as confirmation. This was the ruins of Atlantis, exactly where and when Cayce had said it would appear. Then the geologists showed up. The stones are beach rock, sedimentary rock that forms in the intertidal zone. It's made of sand and shell fragments cemented together by calcium carbonate. And critically, beach rock naturally fractures into rectangular blocks. It's a well-documented geological process. The formations at Bimini are consistent with beach rock that formed during lower sea levels, then broke apart along natural fracture lines as sea levels rose. Core samples show no evidence of tool marks, no signs of quarrying, no indication that humans ever touched them. Radiocarbon dating puts the formation at about 2,000 to 3,000 years old. Too recent to be Atlantis anyway, even if Atlantis were real. But not everyone is convinced. Some researchers point out that there are stones that appear to be propped up on smaller stones, like pillars. There are sections where the blocks seem to form corners, as if outlining a structure, and there are areas where the arrangement is so regular, so precise, that it's hard to believe it happened by accident. The academic community wasn't swayed. They'd seen too many cases where people desperately wanted to find evidence of lost civilizations and ended up seeing patterns that weren't there. Pareidolia, the tendency to see meaningful shapes in random formations. But the Bimini Road refuses to disappear from the conversation. New researchers keep diving there. New theories keep emerging. What makes it so enduring isn't really the physical evidence. It's the idea behind it. We want to believe there's more to our history than we know. We want to believe that beneath the ocean, there are secrets waiting to be uncovered that will change everything. The Bimini Road might not be the ruins of Atlantis. It probably isn't an ancient causeway, but it represents our endless fascination with the possibility that we don't know the whole story. In 2000, a Canadian company called Advanced Digital Communications was conducting sonar surveys off the western coast of Cuba. They were mapping the sea floor for the Cuban government, conducting routine geological surveys at depths over 2,000 feet. And then their sonar picked up something that made no sense. At around 2,100 feet, the sonar images showed what appeared to be structures, not just one or two, but an entire complex of formations arranged in a geometric pattern, shapes that looked like pyramids, long, straight features that could be roads or walls, and most striking, massive blocks of stone, some arranged in circular and rectangular patterns spread across several square miles. The lead researchers, Paulina Zalitsky and Paul Weinsweig, brought in additional equipment. They sent down an underwater robot with cameras. The footage showed smooth, granite-like blocks. Some appeared to have carvings or symbols. The blocks seemed cut, not naturally fractured, and they were arranged in ways that suggested deliberate placement. Zalitsky and Weinsweig estimated some stone blocks were about 8 feet long. The formations covered about 2 square kilometers, and the structures were organized in a pattern that looked remarkably similar to an urban layout. If these were man-made structures, they would have to be incredibly ancient, possibly over 6,000 years old, from when sea levels were much lower and the area might have been above water. The discovery made international headlines. National Geographic expressed interest. And then, everything went quiet. Here's the problem. It's at 2,100 feet. That's beyond the range of most diving equipment. That's submersible territory requiring enormous funding. Every expedition costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, and Cuba, due to political and economic circumstances, isn't the easiest place to organize major research projects. The team tried to secure funding for additional expeditions. They wanted better cameras, stone samples, thorough geological surveys, but the money never materialized, and so the Cuban underwater city remains largely unexplored, known primarily from initial sonar scans and limited robot footage. The skeptical view is reasonable. The area is tectonically active. There's been volcanic activity in the region. Natural rock formations throughout the Caribbean can look artificial, especially through sonar. And without direct samples, without detailed analysis, there's no way to definitively say these formations are anything other than geological. But then there are details that don't fit the natural explanation. The symmetry, the apparent right angles, the way blocks seem arranged in patterns, and most intriguingly, the symbols Zelitsky and Weinsweig claim to have seen on some stones. What makes the Cuban underwater city so frustrating is that we have just enough evidence to know something is there, but not enough to know what it is. The sonar images are compelling, but sonar can be misleading. The robot footage is intriguing, but the video quality is poor. We're left with this tantalizing possibility that beneath the waters off Cuba, there might be ruins of something significant, or there might just be rocks. Without funding, without access, the Cuban underwater city remains one of the great underwater mysteries. Not because we can't explain it, but because we haven't been able to properly study it. For our final destination, we're heading to the mid-Atlantic Ocean, about 900 miles west of the Canary Islands. This isn't a mystery about ancient civilizations. This is something different. This is a discovery that reminds us the ocean can create structures so bizarre, so otherworldly, that they challenge our understanding of what's possible on this planet. In December 2000, a research expedition was exploring the mid-Atlantic ridge using a remotely operated vehicle when they came across a field of towering white structures rising from the darkness. These weren't ancient ruins. These weren't rocks shaped by erosion. These were chimneys, massive, ghostly white towers formed by underwater volcanic activity, some reaching heights of nearly 200 feet. They called it the Lost City Hydrothermal Field, and it's one of the most spectacular and scientifically important discoveries ever made on the ocean floor. The chimneys are formed by a chemical process called serpentinization. Seawater seeps through cracks in Earth's crust and reacts with minerals in the mantle rock. The reaction produces heat, hydrogen, methane, and alkaline fluids rich in calcium carbonate. These fluids vent through the sea floor, and when they hit cold ocean water, the minerals precipitate out and build up over time, forming enormous white towers. But here's what makes Lost City truly extraordinary. These chimneys are alive. The fluids aren't superheated like typical hydrothermal vents. They're warm, between 100 and 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And those fluids support an entire ecosystem of microorganisms that don't rely on sunlight. They get their energy from chemicals in the vent fluids. It's called chemosynthesis, and it's one of the fundamental processes scientists believe could explain how life first began on Earth. The structures themselves are breathtaking. They're white, almost ghostly, made of carbonate minerals that give them an appearance unlike anything else in the deep ocean. Some chimneys are massive, solid towers. Others are delicate, branching structures that look like frozen waterfalls. And they're all actively growing, adding layer upon layer as fluids continue to flow. The largest structure is called Poseidon, and it stands about 18 stories tall. There are dozens of other chimneys throughout the field, each unique in shape and size, and all of them are covered in microbial mats, dense colonies of bacteria and archaea that thrive in this extreme environment. When scientists first discovered Lost City, they realized they were looking at something that might hold clues to one of the biggest questions in science. How did life begin? The chemical reactions happening here are similar to reactions that might have occurred on early Earth, before life existed. The hydrogen and methane being produced could have provided energy for the first organic molecules to form. The mineral surfaces could have acted as catalysts, and the alkaline vents mixing with acidic ocean water create chemical gradients similar to ones that power all living cells. Some researchers believe environments like Lost City might have been the birthplace of life on Earth. Not shallow tide pools, but these deep-sea vents where chemistry creates conditions for biology. And if that's true here, it could be true on other worlds. Jupiter's moon Europa has an ocean beneath its icy crust. Saturn's moon Enceladus has geysers of water. Both likely have hydrothermal activity. If life can exist at Lost City, it might exist there too. One of the most fascinating discoveries is that microorganisms at Lost City are metabolically diverse in unexpected ways. Some use hydrogen as energy, others use methane. Some produce organic compounds that could potentially support more complex life forms, and genetic analysis suggests they might be related to some of the most ancient forms of life on Earth. Microbes that existed billions of years ago, when our planet was very different. Lost City challenges our assumptions about where to look for life. For most of human history, we've thought of life as something that needs sunlight, warmth, and hospitable conditions. But Lost City exists in complete darkness, at temperatures that would kill most organisms, under crushing pressure, miles from the surface, and yet it's teeming with life. There's something almost mythical about the Lost City. The name itself evokes ancient civilizations, sunken ruins, forgotten worlds, and while these structures aren't man-made, they feel just as mysterious. They're created by forces we're only beginning to understand. They support life in ways that challenge our definitions. The towers stand in the darkness, venting their chemical-rich fluids, building themselves taller year by year. They're monuments created by Earth itself, structures that rise from the seafloor, not because of intelligence or design, but because of chemistry and geology working together in ways that seem almost purposeful. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Maybe the ocean doesn't need ancient civilizations or alien artifacts to be mysterious. Maybe the natural world is strange enough on its own. So what do we make of all this? 5 discoveries, 5 mysteries, and not one with a clear, definitive answer. The Yonaguni monument might be ancient ruins, or it might be fractured sandstone that nature carved into shapes that fool our pattern-seeking brains. The Baltic Sea Anomaly could be a glacial deposit, or something we don't have a category for yet. The Bimini Road is probably beach rock, but the believers haven't given up. The Cuban underwater city is either the most important archaeological discovery of the century or naturally formed rocks we've projected our hopes onto. And the lost city is definitely real, definitely natural, and definitely one of the most extraordinary places on Earth. They all exist in that uncomfortable space between what we know and what we want to know. They're ambiguous, they're incomplete, they demand more study, more funding, more attention than we've been willing to give them. The ocean covers 70% of our planet. We've explored maybe 5% of it thoroughly. We've sent more people into space than to the deepest parts of the ocean. We know more about the surface of Mars than the Mariana Trench. And in that vast, unexplored territory, there could be anything. The technology is getting better. Submersibles can go deeper. Sonar is more precise. We're entering an era where the ocean is finally becoming accessible in ways it never was before. And as that happens, we're going to find things, strange things, things that don't fit our expectations. Some will turn out to be natural. Some might be evidence of human history we didn't know existed. And some, maybe just some, might be something we can't easily explain. The people who discovered these sites refuse to accept easy answers. They ask questions other people thought were foolish. They pursued mysteries the academic establishment often dismissed. And whether they were right or wrong in their conclusions, they pushed the boundaries of what we're willing to consider possible. The ocean keeps its secrets well. It corrodes evidence. It hides things under sediment and coral. But it can't erase everything. And as long as there are people willing to look, willing to dive into the unknown, we'll keep finding things down there that make us wonder. Maybe one day we'll have definitive proof of an ancient underwater civilization. Maybe we'll find ruins that no one can dispute, artifacts that rewrite history books, or maybe we'll just keep finding rocks, spectacular, strange, beautiful rocks that remind us that nature is the greatest architect of all. Either way, the search continues. The mysteries remain. And somewhere in the darkness, at depths we can barely reach, there are structures waiting to be explored, waiting to be understood, waiting to tell us their stories if we're willing to listen. The ocean is patient. It's been hiding these secrets for thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands. It can wait a little longer. The question is, can we?